That's okay. Dr. Maroon set the stage for me, and now I'm going to try to answer some of those practical questions. What does this all mean as far as the supplements that are available today? And I don't pretend to have all the answers. I'm very fortunate, though, that I've been sort of attached to the hip with Dr. Maroon for the last 21 years and have had the opportunity to meet with David Sinclair and to hear him go over this extensively with us. And I can tell you that he has some strong opinions on the products that are out there today, although, as someone reminded me, he probably has not looked at some of the quality of the more recently produced supplements that are available and the sources of resveratrol that are out there. So we're going to plow ahead. The title of the talk is The Wild West of Resveratrol and Other Polyphenol Supplements, What to Recommend. And you're going to hopefully, it's going to be like a prescription. I'm going to write down exactly what you're going to take. No, that's not what we're going to get today. But I'll give you some guidelines and ideas on what might be available, some of the best sources. And if you come out a little fuzzy and cloudy, it's because in some respects this is a cloudy and fuzzy area. With the science that Dr. Maroon has gone over and that David Sinclair and Lenny Guarente have pioneered is very clear. Now to turn it into a practical aspect, what can be done, especially in the human model, in which there's essentially no human research as far as clinicals, it's very difficult. So we'll go ahead and try. The idea is to get past the hype. And a lot of you in this room have seen a lot of hype relative to resveratrol, and it's hard to get through it, both from the media, as Dr. Maroon had shown in the previous slides, from newspapers around the world, as well as ads discussing resveratrol. Explains the French paradox. It seems that way. Anti-aging, now in a pill. 100 glasses of red wine in a capsule. The fountain of youth. Again, we may or may not be there, but there's a lot of things that are being said that unfortunately don't have the human clinical trial to properly back them. What's rarely discussed in these ads are, though, that resveratrol is rapidly oxidized when exposed to air and light. And this is a concern that when you buy your products with resveratrol in them, or pure resveratrol, is it a substance that's still bioactive, or has it sat on a shelf in a dock somewhere exposed to sunlight or air? What concentration of resveratrol are you getting? Are you getting a 20% resveratrol, meaning 80% is not resveratrol? Are you getting a 50%? Are you getting a 98% pure resveratrol? All these questions really have to be asked of what you're going to consume. And what is the proper animal to human dosage? How do you convert the studies that we've learned from Lagouge and Sinclair? How do we convert that back into a human dose? And what is the appropriate conversions? And I think from what you might have read, there's a whole range up to the hundreds or even thousands of milligrams that would be the conversion. And I'm not sure if we have the right answer on what the conversion would be. And finally, is the CERT1 activation being shown? I think that this probably is, if any gold standard can be made today, this is probably the gold standard of what can activate, or what can be shown as an active product, if it can activate the CERT in a in vivo study. And this is important for any product to clarify itself in the market as something that's worth taking. So what we're going to talk about is about polyphenols and resveratrol specifically, whether the plant types of resveratrol, the manufacturing, the concentration, the packaging, handling, and stability, the cis or trans resveratrol, which is very important in what can actually activate the genes, the absorption of resveratrol and the limited absorption that is currently believed that happens in the gut. What is the dosing? Animal versus humans claims, safety concerns. A report that came out fairly recently in November 2007, which some of you may be familiar with from Consumer Labs, that looked at some of the leaders as far as making resveratrol. And then, are there other sources of resveratrol besides a supplement that's excluded all other polyphenols? It goes back to the red wine issue in the French paradox. Are we throwing the baby out with the bathwater by eliminating all the other positive polyphenols and just sticking with resveratrol? David Sinclair found one of the polyphenols, resveratrol, to activate the most, but in his 18 other polyphenols, they also activated. So we really want to exclude those other polyphenols. So has anyone ever asked, and having looked or researched or even listened to Dr. Maroon's talk, why polyphenols? I mean, he looked at 20,000, David Sinclair in his lab looked at 20,000 different molecules. Why polyphenols? Why would that be important in the SERT activation? Well, another thing that Dr. Maroon might not have mentioned or you may not know is that David Sinclair is an evolutionary biologist. And in sitting down with him, we asked that same question. Why would polyphenols, of all the 20,000 different substances looked at, be positive? And basically the fact is that there are 10,000 polyphenols out there in the food kingdom. And so we're, as going from the Darwinian fish to the land to the man type scenario, we've been exposed to these plants as our food sources for the millennium. These are the plants that we've consumed. These are the molecules that have been incorporated into our body. And in fact, many of them, the polyphenols, have the same structure as many of our hormones in our body. And that goes with something that the phytoestrogen effect associated with Resveratrol and some of the other polyphenols. So this is, even though it sounds sort of ridiculous why a whole class of molecules would be the ones that are in, if you will, but the fact is that polyphenols are throughout our food chain. In general, they're used and concentrated in the skins of fruits, so those that peel the grape or peel the tomato or whatever you peel off are not going to get the concentrated polyphenols. They're often associated with the color pigment, and as Dr. Maroon also mentioned, they're phytoalexins, generally aid in protection either through herbivores or insects or fungal attacks. They also, which is very important, offer UV protection. One of the big things that manipulates the concentration of resveratrol in nature, as far as the plants, is the amount of UV radiation. We'll discuss a little further on about, and Dr. Maroon showed the slide of the Australian extract. Australia, particularly the Morning Peninsula, in the southern hemisphere, the ozone layer is the worst shape in that part of the world. So the ozone blocking UV radiation has become almost non-existent, and skin cancer and so on have been increasing, but also to the plants that are in that area, the UV radiation is the highest. So consequently, because of the protective nature of resveratrol and other polyphenols, these plants are sort of building up much more resveratrol in reaction to that. And also, polyphenols are a very sensitive molecule in that they can be broken down fairly quickly by oxidative enzymes and of course, cooking. And I think that's also very important. There's many divisions of polyphenols. The point is they cover a whole large span of food groups that we eat, from coffee to vanilla to all the wheats and the oats, apples, peanut butter, oranges. They cover a broad spectrum of foods that we consume every day, very commonly in our diet, but much more commonly in our ancestors' diet. They couldn't go up to the local fast food restaurant. They had to go out and forage, and these are the foods that were common in our early ancestors and the animals that were before them in their diet. Specifically, teas and grapes and cocoa have high concentrations of many of the polyphenols that have been found to be beneficial. Also onions, apples, broccoli, tea. There's a whole host, and these are, having said that the individual polyphenol is in that, it doesn't exclude the others. So for example, as Dr. Maroon said, red wine may have over 500 different polyphenol species, even though it may be thought of as having resveratrol or tannins or other still beans. There's over 500 within it. So these are just examples of some of the products that have higher concentrations within these categories. And to go back and look at David Sinclair's original article on small molecule activators, we can see, and I hope we can see it, that resveratrol is the #1 activating at 13. But also there was quercetin and the other products, Vicodin, that also had some activation. So to go back to my original point of excluding those within a product may be a disservice.